Hey, Cam. How's it going today, sir?
It's going all right, Mitch. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. What you drinking for coffee this morning? Or are you a coffee drinker?
I am a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
I was actually a barista for a good chunk of the last decade. So
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, not a snob. I am educated. So this morning I'm drinking a oat milk draft latte over ice from La Colombe, which is I think a fairly relatively well-known coffee place in the Midwest. So they've got quite a few locations in Chicago and a few locations elsewhere. So
what is it?
It's La Colombe, Colombe.
Okay. I'm not familiar, so we don't have
They
them
make
up
good
here.
stuff, and you can, or at least around where I live, you can get their they're like ice lattes and cold brew coffee in single serve cans at grocery stores.
Oh,
So
all
I
right.
went grocery shopping last night and picked up a couple cans because I also I make my own cold brew at home, and
Mhm.
I didn't make any yesterday. And it usually I like to let it sit for about 18 hours before I drink it. And so I hadn't had any made yet. So I bought a few single cans. But my next cold brew is going to be from Broadsheet Coffee Roasters in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And it's a Finca Buenos Aires Chalchuapa, El Salvador. I don't know what any of that means, but it's supposed to be delicious. So I'm excited about it.
So you like Central American coffee primarily?
I do like Central American coffee, but I also like really dark roast stuff. So like French roast or Italian roast, which I realize can be sourced from different places. That's just how it's roasted. But I do not like the nutty coffees like Brazilian or Indonesian. But I've been to Ethiopia twice, and I've had their coffee in Ethiopia, and it's insane how good it is. I mean, it's good here when you get Ethiopian coffee here, but when you get Ethiopian coffee in Ethiopia that's freshly roasted and made into espresso, oh my goodness. It was glorious.
Yeah. And see, I'm huge into Indonesian. I probably the most common one that I drink is Sumatra.
Yeah, see, that's not my jam.
I love the earthy, dark chocolatey flavor of Sumatra.
I'm more of I like the burnt chocolate, not the earthy chocolate. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm glad you like it because that means someone's drinking it, because not me.
Yeah, I tend to stay away from some of the Central American stuff just because it's very acidic.
Yeah, and it's like bright and citrusy, and yeah. I don't like that stuff for cold brew. I like that more as like a nice hot morning coffee, like, because the brightness and the acidity is like, ooh, hi, wake up. But if I'm making a cold brew, if I'm making a cold brew, I want the dark roasts, the chocolate, the burnt, like all of that sort of stuff. Because it kind of reminds me of like a stout beer, just that dark character that I think is really, really good, either as a French press hot or as a cold brew.
Yeah, and sometimes my Sumatras and some of the other coffees that I drink almost have like a cigar flavor to them. And I like that a lot. So this morning I'm drinking a blend. It's actually a little Central American coffee, but it's got Sumatra in with it, so it kind of balances out that acidic flavor with the more earthy flavors. So it's roasted up in Door County up in Wisconsin, nice. Up here. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you've been up to Door County before.
No, but I've heard tales of Door County, and I have yet to make it up there.
Sure. So we'll have to have you up here sometime, and we can go up to the Dells and kick around for a while. That'd be fun after the pandemic's over.
Record an episode in person.
Hey, we could do that. I have plans to get a second mic in my studio in here, so
I can bring my stuff. We can, we'll figure it out. But
we'll figure it out.
Going to the Dells would be cool. Bring my camera, take some photos, have a nice day enjoying the nature.
Yes. Well, there's nature there, and there's other like touristy stuff we can do too. So, All right. Well, a little follow up from the last few episodes that we've done. Did you have any like new things that you want to talk about with iOS 14?
Not really with iOS 14. I do have a tvOS 14 thing, but do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Let me hijack the show order real quick. So I can't remember
this is your show too, man. So go ahead.
I can't remember if I mentioned this on the last episode or not, because we recorded early, so it was like 3 weeks ago. But I tried previously to download tvOS 14 on my Apple TV because I have some Logitech cameras that I wanted to be able to see on my television just for fun, but you can't do that unless you have tvOS 14. And so trying to, download the beta on Apple TV just wasn't working. No matter what I did, it just wasn't working. So I left it for a couple weeks. And then probably like a week ago, 5 days ago, I went and tried it again. And lo and behold, the option was there. So I installed the beta. And now when you like long press the home button, where you usually go to like change the user or set the AirPlay output for audio, there's now the home icon. And I have the option to view. I've got one camera looking out the back and one camera looking out the front of my house. And so now I have the option to see the cameras, which is nice. Like if I'm working and I order some delivery for lunch because I just don't have time to make it or to go get it because I'm swamped with meetings or whatever, I can just pop the camera on or on the TV. And then when the delivery guy leaves the food on my front door, I can just run and go get it. And I don't have to worry about I can have my headphones on if I'm in a phone call or whatever. I don't have to worry about hearing the door. I can just see, which is really convenient. Plus my daughter thinks it's really cool that she can, watch the backyard or watch the front yard and, see when, cars drive by or people ride their bikes. So it was totally not a necessary upgrade on the beta on the TV, but it is pretty cool to have that functionality built in. And in theory, you can have the HomeKit video in picture-in-picture over your other stuff. I have yet to be able to get that to work. But again, it's a beta. So in theory, that will be there in the fall. But the one problem I've run into is I have two Sonos speakers that I use when I watch TV, like when I watch movies or sports, to get, better stereo quality audio. But ever since I've upgraded the tvOS to 14 beta, or the beta for 14, I constantly have to restart the Apple TV because the audio is out of sync with the video. And then every time I restart it, it's fine. So I'm hoping that's just a beta issue, and that once tvOS 14 is, finalized for the Golden Master, that won't be something that I have to do every single time I want to watch a movie or watch a soccer game. So small issue, not a big deal. It takes like 30 seconds, but Apple's whole thing is it just works, right? And right now it just doesn't work every time. But it's worth the 30 seconds to get the stereo Sonos sound quality, which is great. So anyways, overall, I think tvOS 14 is a nice update. It's not crazy, but with the addition of the HomeKit stuff, I wish you could control your lights from the TV too. But right now it's just cameras, which makes sense as the first iteration because it's a TV. You can throw the camera feed on the TV. That makes sense. But it would be really cool if I could adjust the lights as well. But at that point, I'm nitpicking.
All right. So a little bit of follow up with the iOS 14 for me. I don't have a lot of bad things to say about it. I haven't dealt with any of the Springboard issues that some people have complained about and stuff like that. The one thing I really don't like, and I hope they change this before they release it, I'll be okay with the change in the music app icon, that pinkish color that they're using. Maybe I think it's coral, is all right. I'll live with it. But they put that color in the background of the widget, and it's disgusting. I would have loved to, stick with the black or the white or something like that. The problem is that I've got an album on here, album artwork that is sitting on the widget right now because it's an album that I listened to recently that clashes really bad with that pink. And, why pick a color that is not going to agree with some album covers? That doesn't make sense to me. Like, that's why I feel like a black or a white or even a gray or something like that would make a lot more sense in that widget. But they had to go with this coral color, and there is a slight gradient to it. Mm-hmm. But man, that's terrible. I don't know if you use that widget, but
it's opinionated for sure. I often keep the music icon on my home screen, and it's been white forever, at least as far as I can remember. And the differences have always been in the color of the music note, right? And there's times where I'm like, where the heck is my music app? I can't find it. And I'm like swiping over to the app library, like I forget it's on my home screen because it's so different. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's this real subtle icon right here. I don't mind the icon at all, really. It's just obviously it's much different. And so I just have to retrain my brain that that pink gradient, that's the music app.
So if I would have done the redesign to that app, I would have probably just flip-flopped the gradient colors that were in the note, or in the, what was it, like 8th notes that were on there, or 16th notes. I would have changed that to be the background and then go to the white if they were going to.
Oh yeah, so like the purple to pink gradient.
Yeah, I think that would have been nice. I don't think people probably would have reacted to it quite so much as they're reacting to this. That does pose some challenges to the widget, which I think, is probably why they went this route. But I don't know. The only other problem I have with this widget too is that you can tap on different parts of this widget to get to certain albums or stuff that you've recently listened to. I would love it if they would make up in the corner is the little note that signifies the app. If you could tap on that and just go into the app and not be sent to a playlist or something like that, I would have totally appreciated that. Just something to open up the app, because that would have negated the issue of ever having to have the icon on the screen.
Yeah, but that goes against their whole new widget design, which is that they're not actionable, right?
All it's creating is a new touch target on the widget, because they already have basically 5 different touch targets on the widget.
Right. I get what you're saying, but I don't think
so. Just split the top of that so that on the left hand side is your most recently played playlist or album. On the right hand side, you touch it to just open the app. I don't know. Anyway, it's a nitpick, but I think you before we started recording today, you mentioned that in the app library, the folders are moving around.
Yeah, and I don't know what that's about.
I hadn't noticed that, but now that you mentioned it, yes, I do notice that now. So
yeah, the biggest issue for me was now they seem to be back where they were. So my productivity and social folders got swapped left and right. And then my utilities and references and reading, I think, got swapped. And I was like clicking into the wrong folders because they'd been in the same spot. I'd finally gained muscle memory for, okay, this is where this group is. This is where that group is. And then I don't know if it was after I updated the beta or if they're trying to intelligently move the ones I use more to the top, but social moved all the way to the top. And I'm like, no, I don't use that one very often. In fact, I use productivity, utilities, and references and reading more than I use anything else. So those 3 should be at the top. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes that's dictating what order those folders are in. But again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I would love the ability to customize that order. And I realize that's probably going to come in a future version. But for now, I don't know what the mechanism is for deciding which folder goes where. And that's a bit frustrating as a user to have things move on you and not understand the reasons why.
Yeah. So obviously the top 2 folders are suggestions and recently added. What do you have for the next 2 down?
After those 2, I have productivity on the left and social on the right.
And I have reference and reading on the left and productivity on the right.
It must be by use.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it's like a Siri suggestions kind of thing where it's like, well, we think you're going to want these first. So they're moving those to the top.
Yeah. And so I guess my social one, the reason it's that high is because of messages and Instagram. Because like everything else in that folder, I barely open. But those 2, I open quite a bit.
Yeah, that might be why. Are you on the latest beta?
Beta 4, I think. I am not. They got the alert yesterday to update, and I haven't updated to it yet, but I think that's on the docket for this weekend.
Yeah, I updated this morning, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. So
we shall see. I'll report back.
All right, sounds good. I'll keep that in follow-up going forward. So I'll introduce this next topic. A valued listener of ours gave us some feedback on the show. And among other things, one thing that was mentioned was, I sound like I'm being kind of mean. Like I'm being a little bullyish with you. So I text you right away after I got this piece of follow-up. And you was like, well, no, you weren't being mean. You know, you're fine. I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because I don't want to sound like I'm being mean to you. I think maybe in my language a little bit, sometimes I'm a little curt, but not, not being difficult or abrasive. Also, I think you and I, we're still learning to kind of work with each other and kind of work off of each other. But our voices are very different as well. So I think that sometimes can play a key into that. I mean, what do you think?
I don't think you're being mean at all. Like I've listened back to every episode, and I appreciate the feedback for sure. But even like I don't think I could pinpoint what the listener was referring to without specific examples. And I'm like, if the listener thinks that, then perhaps that's something that we should figure out as we go forward. But like you said, we're still trying to work out the flow of, of how we talk and, how we work off of each other and what's going to land and what's going to, belly flop and that sort of stuff. But I appreciate good sarcasm,
Sure.
Probably more than most people. And I've never felt offended. And like I told you, like if I thought you were being a jerk, I'd call you on it, but I've yet to feel that way. So there's no issue on my end, but I do appreciate the feedback from our valued listeners because we want to make this an enjoyable listening experience for you as well. So if you're feeling that way, then that's something that Mitch and I need to work on so that it's not a distraction to the rest of the show. So
right.
it's go ahead.
And I really like you, Cam. You're a tall guy.
Thanks, buddy. I
have fun doing this podcast.
So. Yeah, me too. It's a good time.
Yep. I'll give you a virtual hug.
Oh, well, that's really all the hugs we can give right now.
Yep. All right. So I'm not mean.
No, but I think it is good feedback because if that's something that listeners are hearing, then it's something that we need to work on, right? Not necessarily as like a stop being sarcastic, but it's proof that our give and take on the show still has room to grow, which rhymes. Right. So we know it can't be wrong.
Right. So I did get one other piece of feedback. I'm just going to call her out. It was my wife that was giving me the feedback. She said that there's another podcaster that she listens to that she thinks you sound a lot like.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'm terrified. Okay.
And you and I have talked about this person before.
Oh no. Okay.
And I remember you saying that you well, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Don't say this.
But you weren't like a super excited about this individual.
Oh,
and you didn't give me any reasons why, but you just, it didn't. Yeah. So do you have any guesses?
Does she think I sound like Marco?
No.
Oh, okay, good. Dan Benjamin?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm. She's like, the way your voice sounds and your delivery is a little Danish.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was like, I definitely don't agree with the Marco assessment.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah. Dan Benjamin. That's interesting.
Yeah. She's going to be laughing right now because she so wanted to hear your reaction to that.
Okay. I'm going to actually have to go. I want details now. Why do I sound like Dan Benjamin? I mean, heck, if I could be half as successful as him, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, me too. So, but yeah, and she's not here right now. She's at work, but if I could, I'd bring her in so she could explain herself.
See, that's really interesting though, because I don't necessarily like my voice. Like I'm not mad about it, but like I think you have a much better radio podcast voice than I do. And then the other show that I do, or one of the other shows that I do, my partner has what I think to be a much better radio and podcast voice than I do. But I tend to like Dan's voice.
Yeah.
He's, I don't know. I have whatever. I'm not going to.
Can I make you feel better about that?
Yeah.
I worked in radio for years. I don't know if I mentioned that on the podcast before, but I actually worked radio in a radio station for about 8 years between two different radio stations. And when I was going to school before that, there was a lot of talk about how the signature voice was less in demand now than like unique voices.
Yeah.
So a lot of times now when you listen to a lot of radio shows and stuff like that, you run into a lot more female voices now because that's a thing in the industry. But you're also running into a lot of male voices that are very unique versus the typical, low bassy voice,
Yeah.
So you're getting a better mix and more diversity in voices now than you would have, say back in the 1950s or something like that. So definitely radio stations are not necessarily looking for the big booming announcer voice anymore. So that's good. It's a good thing. Yeah. So, and I'm not in radio anymore, just in case anybody had that question, because it doesn't pay for anything. I'm working,
unless you're Ryan Seacrest or Ira Glass, right?
You have to be huge in the industry to be making any kind of bank. When I left the radio station that I was at, or was asked to leave the radio station that I was at, that's a long story that we can tell another time. When that happened, I went and got a job in retail, of all things, for about the same amount of money that I was making at the radio station after I'd been working there for years and had actually gotten raises along the way. And I can tell you right now, I'm making probably 50% more than I was making at the radio station. If you're talking about anybody who's in radio, and I made more than this, but I want to use an example. There's a radio station when I was living in my hometown. I was looking at finding a full-time radio gig, and there was a radio station not far from us that was offering $18,000 a year for a full-time radio gig.
Yikes!
And I was like, how do you not have to have like a second and third job, but you're still working 40 hours a week at the radio station for what feels like a nickel a day? You can't pay your bills on that. So, and to be clear, I was making more than that. So if you start doing the math, no, I'm fine. So, I'm good.
Well, but I am, interesting voice comparison, Mitch. And I mentioned Ira Glass, and maybe we can end this segment with this. As I honestly, I think Ira Glass might have been the tipping point for non-traditional radio voices becoming popular, because honestly, his voice is a bit grating, right? He's got that kind of nasally, high-pitched New Yorker sort of deal, but he's incredibly successful for obvious reasons. Like, the dude knows how to tell stories, and he's incredibly gifted. And so I was like, man, if a guy with that voice can make it, as successfully as he had, like, one, good for him, and two, like, that's, I mean, I don't really know the history of radio voices and that sort of stuff as much as maybe you do, but he seems to me to be like a tipping point in that, of like, wow, talented people are talented people. And even if they don't have that traditional, Sunday sort of, voice, if they can do their job well.
That was totally me at the radio station too. I was the over-inflection guy.
Cool. Well, that's interesting feedback, and I'm glad that you didn't tell me that before the show.
Yeah, because that was fun. We did have some new Macs come out this last week. So 27-inch Mac, basically moving to a 10th generation Intel chips. So not silicon yet, not Apple silicon, but definitely getting that line upgraded. All SSD storage with the exception of the 21-inch machines. So not a lot of updates on the 21-inch machines. The 27-inch definitely got the big upgrades. So do you want to kind of cover a few of the changes to the new line?
Yeah. So they've got that nano texture glass now, which they first put on the Pro Display XDR.
Yep.
Which I think is interesting. It's a $500 addition to go from standard glass to that nano texture, which is like a matte look, and it's much less reflective. And then, of course, there's upgrades to the the 10th gen. You can do an i7 or an i5 at the low end, or an i9 if you upgrade on the high end. And then this is the crazy part. Like the memory, you can now go up to 128 gigs of memory, which is bonkers. And then they've updated the graphics too. You can get Radeon Pro 5700 XT with 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. Yes, I'm looking at the stat sheet right now. And that's just a cool extra 500 for that. It's an extra 2,600 to go from 8 gigs of memory to 128. And then you can get an 8 terabyte SSD in this thing, which costs you another $2,400.
Yep.
Of course, the 10 gigabit Ethernet if you want it. So I'm looking right now. If you choose there's 3 versions, 3 base models. If you choose the most expensive one, which is the 3.6 gigahertz, 10 core, 10th gen i9, and then you max everything out. Do you have any guess how much this costs?
I'm going to think it's quite a bit more than a Mac or an iMac Pro, not more than a Mac Pro, but I'll say about $7,000.
$8,799, or
wasn't too far
or
off.
A simple payment of $733.25 a month.
Pocket change.
Yeah,
that's a lot of moolah.
Now, the base model for that high end Mac costs, I think, like $2,790 or $2,299. So that's an extra $6,500 in upgrades.
Oh, I thought it was $17.99 for the 27-inch.
That's for the low end. I'm saying if you get of the three base options, it's $17.99, $19.99, and $22.99. So the one I just maxed out was the third option. I just wanted to see what the most expensive 27-inch iMac could be, and it's $87.99, which is just ludicrous.
I am been considering an iMac and kind of bouncing back between the like a 27-inch iMac and possibly looking at the iMac Pro. And right now it hasn't made sense to go iMac Pro, but I'm interested to see if you could spec for spec get the what the iMac would be versus the iMac Pro spec for spec price wise. So if you matched everything up, would it come out exactly the same, or
I don't know if you can go spec for spec. I'm trying it
or
right
at least
now.
Close. Yeah. This brings up
so the iMac Pro starts at 10 cores, whereas the iMac 27-inch maxes out at 10 cores. You can go up to 18 cores in the iMac Pro, and you can get 256. So if we just do 128 and leave the iMac at 10 cores, but it's a different chip. It's an Intel Xeon W processor, so it's not the same chip, but leave it at 10 cores. 16 gigs of memory. It's a different graphics card, but we'll at least try and match the memory. You can only get 4 terabytes, so we'll leave that. So it's half the storage. That's $85.49, but that's not the maxed out iMac Pro, obviously. But if you're trying to get as close to spec for spec as possible, considering that they're different processors and different graphics cards.
So you're actually probably getting a little bit better value with the iMac right now.
Yeah, and like I said, it's certainly not the maxed out version. The maxed out version is holy Moses.
Too much.
Yikes. It is.
I think you can buy an entry-level Mac Pro for what you'd put into an iMac Pro maxed out.
Yeah, iMac Pro maxed out is $13,499.
Yep. You could get the Mac Pro, the monitor for the Mac Pro, and the stand for about what you'd max out an iMac Pro for.
That's crazy.
I don't know if you get as much machine, but yeah. Anyway, that's my biggest reason for bringing that up is that this has caused an internal conflict for me because, we talked a few episodes back about like, would we go for the Apple Silicon or an Intel Mac right now? And I'm really kind of split on this right now because I feel like there wasn't a lot put into the 21-inch iMacs, which makes me wonder if we aren't going to see an Apple Silicon iMac on the low end before the end of the year, or at least maybe the first part of next year. And with the new design, with obviously the Apple Silicon, as I said, maybe around a 24-inch is what they're rumoring right now. I'm really torn as to whether or not to stay on Intel for the next machine and let them kind of work out some of the bugs that you might have on Apple Silicon, or just kind of hold off and wait for that Apple Silicon machine and pull the trigger. I don't need the computer right now badly, so I can wait. But it is something that I do want to get into the studio here and use as my main machine in the studio. So. The problem that arises, I really want to get like 7 to 10 years out of that machine. Now I know you're probably 5 years is the normal limit on these machines, but I want to stick with this machine as long as I can. It's not going to be moving around like my laptop is and stuff like that. So as long as the specs on the machine, and I'll probably spec it up a little bit better so it does last longer, but as long as that machine's chugging along and doing okay, if I get 10 years out of it, I'm going to be super happy with that. So do I wait 10 years for Apple Silicon is kind of my thought, or am I just happy with Intel? And I suppose FOMO kind of leans into that a little bit too.
Well, but how old is your current machine?
Currently I don't have a desktop in here, and that's what I'm looking at adding. My laptop here, I think, is a 2016 machine, and I probably bought it in 2016 or 2017.
So you could
it's just a few years old.
2 more years. You could easily get 2 more years out of that, and then make your decision on the iMac.
Yeah, I could.
You're not locked. I know you want one, but you're not locked into making a decision in the next 6 months, right? It's not like you're rocking a 2011 MacBook,
right?
Plastic white MacBook,
right?
Because then if you give yourself that 2-year buffer, then you can certainly buy an Intel in those 2 years, or you can see if the Apple Silicon is a dumpster fire or if it really does seem stable, right? And then you'll have options.
Well, part of my thought process here on the Apple Silicon has been that that they've got a lot of experience building these machines already, not in a laptop or a desktop configuration, but their iPads, their iPhones, they're all on very similar silicone. It's just a matter of whether or not the new machines that they're going to come out with here are going to be any good. And you do sometimes suffer from the early adopter syndrome, where you get that new machine and then you're like, shoot, this is cool, but it's got this issue, it's got that issue. You and I both had the first Apple Watch, and that thing, once you upgrade to a new Apple Watch, I've got the Series 4 right now on my wrist. It's like you can actually use this thing. The old one, you could tell the time on it, and a few of the complications worked all right. But, as far as being able to do anything with it, you tapped on an app and it would just spin, or in your case, the screen flew off.
Yeah, mine was great until the battery got claustrophobic and decided to break free.
So, anything else that we wanted to say about that? I'm done with my spiel.
No, I mean, I think it's one of the things that I read and that you reminded me of pre-recording is that they kept the prices the same, and they doubled the amount of storage and the amount of memory that was available in these machines, plus upgraded the processors and the graphics cards. So Apple is notorious for cranking up the price whenever they can. And I think it was a really smart move on their part to, give this thing a pretty significant spec bump and keep the prices, at least the entry level prices, the exact same, which I think is nice. They're still very expensive. Like, let's not joke. $1,800 for the entry level iMac is still not cheap. Like, that is a significant investment for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, it's not even something that they can do because of how expensive it is. So the fact that they kept the prices the same is just nice.
And that's a 27-inch too. So they do have a 21-inch if somebody's in the market for it.
But no, that 27-inch 5K display, Mitch, I used one for about a year and a half when I was doing web design, and it is glorious.
One of the harder decisions is going to be whether or not to go with that nano texture, because man, that I've heard really good things about that nano texture, but at the same time, it's fiddly as far as maintenance, as far as cleaning and stuff like that too. So you have a special cloth for it.
Oh gosh, yeah, I wouldn't want to make that decision without actually seeing one in person and knowing more information about that sort of stuff, cleaning it.
All right, so moving on, I kind of wanted to touch on a couple of things that, or at least something that I'm struggling with, and I thought I'd give an option for you to kind of talk about something that you're struggling with right now too. Who wants to go first?
Why don't you go first?
You want me to go first? All right, I'll go first.
I
thought I would
make
sure that I wasn't being mean about it. So,
not at all.
Sorry,
lead the way.
All right. So, so something that I've been really struggling with lately is, and I'll take you back in time with me a little bit. I grew up in a pretty conservative Bible church, and so I didn't really own my faith probably. And I think you kind of understand what I mean by that, digging in and learning for myself until I probably got out of high school. And when I got out of high school, I met up with a guy, got to be good friends with him. We're still friends. It's been about 25 years. And 25 years since I graduated high school. That makes me sick. But him and I have been good friends for a long time, and he went to a Pentecostal church. And I want to preface this by saying, if you go to a Pentecostal church, and I know that you don't, but if one of the listeners grew up Pentecostal or charismatic, I have some very strong feelings about all of this that at some point in the future maybe we can talk about. But just for the story, I kind of want to be clear about where I'm coming from before I tell you what I'm struggling with. That, in the Pentecostal church, there is the idea of being able to lose your salvation, which I've come around on now, and I do believe in eternal security. But as I've grown over the years, and when we moved to the town that we're in now, I got to a church that was more like what I grew up with. It was a Bible church, non-denominational. And the pastor kind of took me under his wing and was kind of getting me out of some of the things that I was really confused about when it came to the Pentecostal or charismatic stuff. We went to an Assemblies of God churches primarily at the time. And just the idea that if you do the wrong thing, or you say the wrong thing, or you do something, God could take your salvation away from you. I struggled with that a lot. I was very confused about that. And it took this particular pastor sitting down with me and going over all the passages in the Bible that really talked about, or that they use at least to talk about losing your salvation, and explaining those passages to me to help me to understand what those passages actually mean. And in pretty much 100% of cases, it's not talking about the justification or the salvation that is go to heaven when you die, you know, you're in with God. It's a totally different thing. And like I said, we can talk about that some other time. It's not my point to discuss that now. So, you know, in the last couple of years, I've really struggled with the idea of like how I use my time. And it comes down to where your liberty in Christ, where we're free to do what we want to do. You know, Paul says that all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. So finding that line where you say, I can do this, but it's not profitable for me to do this other thing, you know, and I don't have to feel guilty about, you know, what I do, just making sure that I'm using my time effectively and doing things that are honoring God. But there's this tension constantly with me between this liberty in Christ that we have and trying to use my time effectively and not do a lot of things that are wasteful of my time. And a little bit of background about me and Cam and how we met is that we're both, I'm going to stop short of saying big fans of the WWE and watching wrestling, but we both brother. But we both really enjoy, you know, watching pro wrestling. I know it's stupid, but we do. We enjoy it. You know,
don't make me laugh when I have coffee in my mouth. Please.
Did you spray it all over your computer?
No, that's why I laughed out my nose and sounded like an evil cartoon villain, because I was trying to keep the coffee in my mouth. Sorry, that was way too much detail. Carry on. Pro wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, brother. But anyway, I think I mixed two different wrestlers there.
Oh my gosh.
But, you know, I've struggled over the years about like how much time, because if you really get deep into wrestling, you can spend every waking moment watching wrestling. You know, there's just on the WWE every week, there's 5-7 hours of wrestling that's new for the week.
So you got 3 for Raw, 2 for NXT, that's 5, 2 for SmackDown, that's 7, 1 for 205 Live, that's 8, and then if you want to watch Main Event, that's another hour, that's 9.
Okay, nobody watches Main Event.
I'm just saying.
I don't even consider that. 205 Live, I don't really watch, so I kind of forgot that existed. They do have the NXT UK that you could watch, which
not right
I'm
now.
not sure. Is that like an hour?
Yeah, it's an hour, but they haven't done any live shows during the pandemic because England won't let them, because England is smart.
Okay.
at least in that regard. That's a whole.
But they're an essential business.
Only because WWE paid Florida $18 million in political money to get that. So, you know, that's, American politics isn't corrupt at all.
Yeah, not at all. But, you know, you can watch a lot of wrestling throughout the week. And so for me, like, I struggled with that because I only have so many hours in a week that I have to be able to do what I want to do, because I'm working 40 hours a week. You know, by the time I get done with work, I'm pretty much done for the day. So, you know, whatever I do in the morning, which I usually go into work like 10:30, 11:30, 12:30, you know, somewhere in there in the morning. So I have, most days I have a little bit of time in the morning to get stuff done. So sitting down and watching wrestling during that time is kind of just blowing the time. You know, I'm not accomplishing anything by doing that. Now, on the flip side of it, I can sit down and watch wrestling and do other things. You know, that I can multitask that way, but not always effectively. So it's really come down to like, how do I've really struggled with whether or not to just stop watching wrestling altogether. But I've tried that before, and I just, you know, I enjoy it. It's something where I can turn my brain off and just sit back and enjoy it. And I think that to a certain degree that's needed. So where do you draw the line? How do you figure out, where does my liberty in Christ end and my responsibility to using my time effectively begin? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any thoughts on that, or, how do you handle that?
So I think for me, the deciding factor in that is, am I doing things, like watching wrestling or like reading books, like not necessarily bad things, right? Or like doing yard work or like playing, music as a way to ignore things like studying the Bible, praying, working on my relationship with God, engaging in, friendships and being a part of my local church. Like, am I using those things to escape and or replace the things that I know I should be doing to ensure that, I am trying to be closer with God. I'm trying to expose myself to the word and to Christian community and to, the inherent, the phrase iron sharpens iron, right? That friction of human relationship and spiritual relationship with God that is going to refine me and call out my weaknesses and try and strengthen my character and my integrity, right? And so for me, a lot of that stuff, those distractions do become issues in that inherently by themselves, they're fine, right? But when they replace or try to replace the things that I know that I should be doing, that in theory I want to be doing, but require effort, right? Like watching wrestling doesn't require much effort, but praying does, at least for me. Studying the Bible requires effort. And like you said, at the end of the day, after work or, what have you, it's a lot easier just to say, oh, I'm going to watch this soccer game, or, oh, I'm going to watch an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Because that's just, it's fun, it's entertaining, I don't have to think, right? And so that's kind of how I differentiate, or how I decide, like, okay, am I using my time wisely, or is this really just me trying to escape and get away from, what I know I should be doing? And a lot of that requires you to, have some honest conversations with yourself and be willing to say, you know what? Yeah, like I just sat and watched 3 hours of Monday Night Raw, and I totally avoided any sort of, self-reflection, any sort of spiritual growth. Like I haven't, prayed in 3 days because I'm, feeling X, Y, and Z, and just having that sort of, internal review and then being honest with yourself about it. So I think that's kind of how I would approach it, is like, am I using this as a replacement for what I know I should be doing, or am I in a good spot? And now, it's okay that I watch wrestling, because like you said, there's nothing wrong per se with entertainment. But if entertainment becomes the sole source of my, value or whatever, then you know that you're out of balance.
I'm tempted to pivot this conversation just real quick before we turn it over to you. Because wrestling came up, there's another thing that, I don't know that it bothers me so much. I know it bothers my wife sometimes, is the scantily clad ladies on wrestling. How do you kind of reconcile that?
Honestly, I really don't watch the women's matches. Unless it's a match between two of the women that I know are going to deliver a really, really, really good match. Otherwise, I just skip them, because I don't need more half-naked women in my life. Now, to be fair, compared to what it was like in the 90s, it's night and day. There's no bra and panties matches. There's no mud wrestling. There's no bikini contests. Like, there's no people having their bras ripped off and obviously not showing anything on TV, but the context is, ooh, we're going to see, and there are quite a few ladies now that wrestle that are, in comparison, incredibly modest in what they choose to wear. Like, I think of Bayley. You don't see, she wears pants. There's no cleavage. Like, but then there's other, wrestlers that, flaunt, their sexuality, if you will. So I just, most of the time, will just skip the matches altogether. Unless I know, like, if Sasha and Bayley are going to wrestle again, I'm going to watch that because it's going to be an incredible match. So that's kind of how I handle it. It's just skip over it, which, saves me time because now there'll be like four women's matches on a Raw or a SmackDown. So I was like, oh man, this 3-hour show all of a sudden becomes 2. So, and it's not like a disrespect to the ladies. Like they're obviously wrestling for a reason. They're very talented, but I don't need that in my life.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. I do tend to skip through the matches partially because too oftentimes they're just not that good. No disrespect, because there's a lot of men's matches that just aren't that good either. It's not a female versus male thing. But I also find some of the women on there grating, and I know that that's kind of their point, but it seems like it's easier to handle a really good heel male versus a heel female.
I don't know. What I mean? I skip everything that Cameron Grimes does in NXT because he makes me want to punch the wall.
Oh yeah, I can agree with that.
He's so annoying, and he's ruining my name, and I'm not happy about it.
Yeah. Well, you're Cam, he's Cameron. We'll make that distinction.
Cameron is my real name, so
I figured. So.
But yeah, he's awful. He makes my skin crawl.
But anyway. So you want to go ahead and what are you struggling with?
Well, if we're being honest, Mitch,
I hope we're being honest.
A bit of loneliness, my friend. It's being a single dad is hard enough in normal times, but having that occur right before quarantine and lockdown and all that stuff has been pretty difficult. And I know I'm not the only single parent out there, obviously, that's had to deal with being a single parent during the pandemic in all of the various ways that has impacted our lives. But for me, the singleness occurred right before the pandemic. So the double whammy of becoming a single dad and then being cut off from, friends and family and my church community kind of all at once was, that was really hard. And now, as things have slowly opened up a little bit, we've been able to have church now, I think for 3 or 4 weeks with a limited number of people. That has helped. And, I've been able to have phone conversations, but the lack of, just being able to go over someone's house and hang out for 4 months was really tough. Not having that companion that I had for 10 and a half years, was really hard. And I tend to isolate anyways when, I'm struggling, which is not good in and of itself, right? It's just not something that someone should do. But that's kind of my what's the word? My flaw, I guess, in that sense. So it's been a rough 9 months in that regard. I do have friends. I do have people that care about me. I do talk to them, but it's different having phone conversations than it is, hanging out, being able to hug someone, being able to pray with someone, in person, up close. So it's been a learning curve, right? One, learning how to be a single dad, is wow. I had no idea. I was so naive. And then learning how to do it during the pandemic and then, being essentially alone. So it's been rough. And that's really kind of the thing that I have been struggling with the most is how to learn how to move forward, how to learn how to not add to that by isolating myself more. So it has been interesting, to say the least.
I can copy definitely the isolation aspect of that. So I think when I struggle with any kind of depression or anything like that, the isolation is just kind of a component of that anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely a way that I don't know if most men deal with that, but I can tell you years ago, I had a pastor friend of mine make the comment that the devil draws you inward, God draws you out. And I've used that for so many years to deal with depression. And, you know, once I come to the realization that I'm isolating myself, it's like, okay, no, the way to get out of this is to find people and to talk to people and to get out of my head and talk to others. Mm-hmm. And it's such a powerful way to kind of overcome those issues. You know, if you need to, like, go over to your pastor's house and move a bookcase, you know, so, you know, just helping people out. You know, I've gotten the call before to go do some raking, you know, yard raking for some friends or something like that. You just get out of what you're doing. Because once you break that, you know, I don't know how I feel about medicating depression. I don't. But my opinions are not, I mean, they're just my opinions. But I find that it's so easy in practice to say, okay, you know, when I'm really struggling and when I just want to go and just bury my face in a pillow and ignore the rest of the world for you know, until the foreseeable future, just dive into that. When I'm feeling that way, I know, dude, get up, go do something, go help somebody, go talk to somebody, go just get out of your own head, because that causes so many issues. So I don't know if that directly relates to what you're saying, but I
will just say, to clarify, like, there's a difference between occasional depression or seasonal depression or circumstantial depression and those folks that have actual physiological, like, chemical imbalances that cause depression and anxiety. And I think it's important that we separate those two, right? Because I know for the people that have the chemical imbalances where it really is a physiological issue, that they need medication in order to help counteract the chemical imbalances. Whereas I think people like you and me, that suffer from it occasionally, whether it's circumstantial or whatever, like, that's more of a temporary situation versus a chronic situation. So I just wanted to make that quick distinction because I know people personally that struggle with the physiological aspect of it, and they need the medication because it is chronic and it is something that their body is doing to them. And I can't even imagine what that would be like to struggle with. Like, I know how hard it is for me to feel lonely right now and how much that weighs on me. And it's circumstantial, right? It's because of my circumstances. It's not because of something physiological that is chronic. And that is a whole nother burden that I know a little about because of people I know, but I have no experience with. So I can, like, sympathize, but not empathize. And that would be incredibly hard. So for the people out there that are struggling with that, like, stay strong. I know a little bit of how hard it can be, and hang in there.
You bet. No, I don't mean to diminish that in any way. So that's why I said opinion, not
right. And
I know facts. You know,
just wanted to clarify because I knew that's not what you were saying, but I didn't. I was hoping that people would understand that, but I figured clarity is always better. So that's
Well,
that's where I'm at.
You ready to put a smile on the podcast?
Always.
There's a feature that I thought we would start doing on the podcast, and I want to give a little background on this. Probably a month and a half ago, I was it seems so silly to call this an allowance, but my wife gives me a little bit of money out of our paychecks every couple of weeks. So that just money that I have control over. I let her do all the finances, and that's part of her role in our marriage. And I try to input where input is needed, but it's something that has worked in our marriage for years, and I don't mess with it. But
smart man,
the guy needs a little bit of money to spend, So I'd been spending so much money on remodeling my studio and putting so much money into like just improving what's going on down here, that I suddenly got the urge to spend something on me, and just something nice that I could put in the studio that would put a smile on my face. And I went to my wife one day and I says, I think this week I'm just going to buy something that delights me. I want to find something that just kind of puts a smile on my face and makes me feel good. And so she's like, well, okay. So it took me 2 or 3 weeks to really find something that I could spend that $20 on that put a smile on my face. And to this moment, I'm not even sure what that item was, but I don't know if it was my Sith holocron that I bought, which is kind of cool. But my wife brought this idea up. She's like, why don't you talk about what delights you? And so, I know that there's other podcasts that do like their weekly picks or, something like that. But I thought we could look at this as like, what's delighting you? And it's totally open-ended. It's totally, nothing that we have to, like it has to be a tech product or it has to be this or that. But just like, what's delighting you right now? So I'll pose that question to you, since this is our first opportunity to do this segment. And I do not have a specific thing in mind that I was going to talk about. So I'll give me a minute to kind of look around and figure out what's delighting me right now. But go ahead, Cam. What's delighting you this week?
So I'm going to start this off a bit abstract, because I think by me sharing what I'm about to share, it will inform a lot of why I choose the things I choose if we continue to do this in future episodes. So if you'll allow me to be a bit abstract here to kind of set the groundwork for, I think, a lot of how I process things, it might make sense in the future as to why I choose the things that I choose. So the thing that delights me the most in life, period, is beauty. And that's, like I said, it's an abstract concept, right? Like that can apply in a lot of places, but that's, I think, the reason that it works for me is, beauty in nature, beauty in art, beauty in music, beauty in architecture, in something as small as a flower, something as big as an ocean ecosystem. I mean, physical beauty, right? Like it is everywhere. And for folks like you and me that are Christians, we have a basis for why beauty exists, why it is something that speaks to us, in our souls. When we hear a moving piece of music, when we watch a beautiful film, when we see a beautiful sunset, when we see a beautiful painting, there's something in us that is moved. There's emotion around it. There's feeling around it. There's thoughts around it. Like it encapsulates our entirety, as a human. And as Christians, we believe in beauty because we believe that God created all things, especially us, right, in his image. And so because we are created in his image, we also have the ability to appreciate the creation on a different level, because we have that creative, part of us, that integral part of us that wants to create, that wants to make. And God gave us that ability, right, to create life, to create art, to create culture, to create economy, to create architecture, and you look at the world, and not only is the physical world diverse in its beauty, but so is the made world. If you look at all the different cultures that we have made as humans, all the different architecture types, the cuisine types, the music types, the art types, it is incredibly diverse. And one of the things that I always tell my students in the youth group is God could have made everything beige and taste like cauliflower, and that would have been good enough. But he chose to make things incredibly diverse. incredibly beautiful, incredibly vibrant. I mean, you have everything from the Amazon rainforest to the Sahara Desert to the Arctic tundra and everything in between. You look at the ecosystems of the ocean, the ecosystems of the different climates, the ecosystems in the sky. You look at the fact that there are stars and planets in this universe that we'll never know exist, let alone see. And then all of the things that God has given us the ability to create. And that just blows my mind in so many ways. And the appreciation of the beauty that I see in everyday life it just delights me. I love going and walking by the river and seeing the geese and the ducks and all the plants. And I love looking at the stars in the sky or watching a fire. I love art. I love music. I love good writing. I love architecture. I love taking photos. I love making music. And all of that stems to delighting in the beauty that is all around us. So I know that was long-winded and a bit abstract, but that's kind of how I wanted to start my portion of this What Delights You segment, because I think beauty is inherently the undercurrent of everything in life, even when life sucks and tragedy strikes and awful things happen. Beauty doesn't disappear. And I think because of beauty and because of what God has created and how he has created us in his image, when tragedy does strike, it's even worse because it is in such juxtaposition to the beauty of life. And we see the tragedy in more depth and more reality because of how starkly different it is from the beauty that is being alive. So, yeah, beauty delights me, Mitch.
I really wanted to end that by saying, well, that was really beautiful.
You can.
It was. And it makes me feel really petty to choose taking your queen in our chess game the other day. But
no, that can bring you delight too. But I just, well, to be fair, I was gonna say my bass guitar brings me delight, but I wanted to.
Oh yeah, I wanted to save that for another time.
Yeah, I wanted to start kind of broadly and set a framework for like how I think and how I view things and what is important to me, because I think that will again inform the decisions that I make going forward. And I wanted people to understand what the thread running through those things was and why I think the way that I think about that sort of stuff.
Well, I could have went a bunch of different ways with mine. I've been really enjoying having sports back.
Oh, amen. Hallelujah.
Yeah, right. Although I think I enjoy hockey, and my Minnesota Wild, I think, just got knocked out of the playoffs last night. So that's not happy, but
it's okay. I'm pretty sure the Red Wings didn't even make the playoffs. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure. One thing I do want to talk about, and this really gave me a lot of joy here. About a week and a half ago, I was working on my Python script for we get a bonus in a couple times a year at work, and it's based on our sales. And I won't go into a lot of nitty gritty about this because it's really, it can be kind of complicated, but the equation that they work to get this is not the most simple equation, but they do make it known to us as far as how it's figured. And I used to have a spreadsheet that I used. I used to be in HR at the store that I work at, and I built all this stuff while I was doing HR, and so that I could get the associates excited about this and all that kind of stuff, because it's all sales based. That we get these bonuses. So I realized that I could do way more as I'm learning scripting and I'm learning how to code. I realized I could do way more with that than I could with the spreadsheet, because, we ran into an issue this year, and I don't want to get into any specifics, but our sales have been crazy this year with COVID and with the stay-at-home order there for a while, and getting the stimulus packages, and just like we've seen more money come through our store than it's just insane. So I'm like, we got to get this figured out. And so there's all these little things. And like I said, I can't go into all the specifics, but all these little things that weigh into this particular number, to come up with this number. So I've been banging my head on this. I've been trying to figure out, how do I code this to make this make sense? There are a couple of different qualifiers that need to be figured in. And about a week and a half ago, I finished it. I finished the script, and it works perfectly. Nice. I worked it out I tested it in all kinds of different situations. And basically, like, if you're over a certain percentage, you can't earn more towards the bonus. So that was something I never had to deal with before. So the spreadsheet worked just fine, and it totally fell apart because we were over that percentage this last half. And so trying to figure out how to make this all work in the spreadsheet was just not working for me. And matter of fact, I had the wrong number there for a while, and it was quite a bit more than it should have been. And so now getting this script figured out, it accounts for that. There's if-else statements in there that say, well, if this is true, then go ahead and run this calculation. If not, run this calculation. And so I was able to build that all into this script. And when I finished it, I was like, dang, that was cool. Like, I finished the script, and it works. So it was very, very gratifying with all the stuff that I've been learning with this stuff to be able to get that to work. And what became evident at that point is, if I want to, I can actually build an iOS app that does this. So that might be a next step as I'm furthering myself along down this road, is to build just this simple little iOS app. I don't know if I'll ever put it on the store, but just for myself to be able to plug in, two numbers really was what it amounts to. These two numbers calculate out everything to be able to get to the our bonus. So
nice.
So that delighted me in the last couple of weeks. So yeah,
very good.
Cool. Mm-hmm. I started playing poker online too again, which was kind of fun. But
I thought I noticed that icon in your screenshot you sent me earlier.
Yeah, I've been enjoying that. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for what I'm looking to talk about here. Did you have anything you wanted to add today?
No, I think we have safely arrived at the end of our journey today.
All right. Well, if you'd like to check out all the podcasts, you can check us out at innerdialogue.show. That's innerdialogue.show. If you have questions, comments, anything that you would like to add or let us know about, you can catch me on Twitter at Mitch Craig.
I am at Cam Brennan.
So hit us up on Twitter. Let us know if you just want to tell Cam how sorry you feel that he has to deal with my jerkishness all the time. Feel free to let him know on Twitter. My wife is not on Twitter all that much, so it would be hilarious if she messaged you and paid her respects. But anyway, and we've been playing on chess.com. Cam and I have been. So if you would like to play us, I'm going to throw this out for myself, but I'm assuming you'd be fine playing some of the listeners if they decide they want to play us. I'm actually not expecting that anybody's going to like, hey, I heard you on the show. Both listeners probably don't play chess, but
who knows?
But we've been having fun, and I've been having fun, at least. I don't know about you.
I was having fun up until I gave you my queen because I thought I was going to checkmate you in a turn. I was so mad, Mitch. I was so mad. And the thing is like I saw the fork, and I was like, oh, he's totally going to take that move because he's going to fork my king and queen. But that's the bait, because then I'm going to move my queen, and then you did it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm in check. I'm such an idiot. Like, I totally knew what you were going to do, and it was exactly what I wanted you to do, only because I forgot the rules of chess for a minute and realized that if my king is in check and a fork, I'm going to lose whatever other piece is being forked. I thought I was being incredibly clever. And I was like, I'm baiting him. He's going to do exactly what I want. And just, oh my gosh, the backfire. I was so angry. I almost threw my phone across the room. That's how angry I was.
Oh, I've done it before. I get it. What was funny about that is I think
the game is not over though, Mitch. I'm fighting strong.
It's not over yet. Yeah, I'm not honestly sure how I'm going to finish this game, but we'll see. Ooh, oh! I think I just figured it out.
Are you looking at it right now? Are you cheating on the podcast listeners with our chess game?
Yep, I think I just mated you. I did.
Well, I have 3 days to look, so I'm going to make you wait.
Oh boy. Yep. I just mated you. So I'll send a rematch. Yeah.
Well, I have to go now.
I didn't see that until just right now. So anyway. But
I thought we were going to end the show on a smile, Mitch. Come on, man. I want to go cry.
I'm smiling.
Well, I'm not.
So
I'm mad.
So here's what I was gonna say about taking your queen is when I moved into that fork, I think I was sitting in the break room at work, and I did laugh maniacally, and everybody in the break room kind of looked at me. It's just like, and of course none of them knew what I was doing, so then I had to be like, oh, I just played a move, and now I'm gonna be taking his queen. So I think I actually said, "Ha! Figure a way out of that one." So,
yeah,
sorry, man.
No, it's not your fault. I'm the one that forgot how chess works. So, yeah, I would be less mad if I didn't see it. But the fact that I saw it and thought, "Ooh, I'm going to trap him," is just, oh my gosh. Anyways, this is way too much for our listeners to care about, so we should sign off.
All right. Well, thank you, sir, for another good show today.
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for the conversation.
You bet. It's been fun. So we'll see you guys all in a couple of weeks. Thanks for listening.
Bye.